Welcome to the Inside College Soccer Podcast, brought to you by Sports Recruiting USA, the college soccer recruiting experts. Now, here's your host, Chris Cousins.
Hi everyone, wherever you're listening in the world, this is Chris Cousins, the founder of Sports Recruiting USA and the quote-unquote host of the Inside College Soccer Podcast. It's a good episode this time. We're on episode number 5. First of all, thanks very much for all the feedback and everything for the last 4 podcasts that we've had. It's been great to hear from people, and looking at the numbers, there's quite a few people listening as well, which I'm surprised by, but obviously very happy about that. So yeah, this episode we've got David Mayer. He is an there's a lot of things really, but started life in England in the academy system, moved to the States as a college player, played for Akron and Charlotte, ended up coaching at college level a little bit, then moving on and is in his career now as a coach, but also he's a co-author of a bestseller, Amazon best-selling book. So yeah, he tells us all about his journey. It's really informative. All the bad times he's had and also the good times as well. So there's a lot of things to be learned from this as a player, definitely. And it's just a good listen as well. So he's a good guy. So yeah, that's it. One thing I will ask, if you don't mind, if you can, on whatever podcast broadcast you're listening on, which is Apple, Spotify, just kind of leave us a review or 5 stars. It does help us a little bit, or share it with your friends. A lot of people have been obviously telling their friends to listen to some of the guests we've had on here, so that'd be really, really appreciated. So that's it. I'll keep it short and sweet as much as I can. So we're going to go straight into the show. Thank you.
David, thanks for coming on the podcast. It's a privilege to have you on. So as we start off with every guest, can you introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about yourself, take as long as you want, and to give us a full history of yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. And thanks for having me on too. So my name's David Mayer, originally from Wigan. So it's 25 minutes between Manchester and Liverpool. Grew up there. From a playing standpoint, I was in the academy system in England from 8. Never really played grassroots. Was always in the academy system.
With who?
I was at Blackburn.
Yeah.
Up until 15, or under 15. Sorry. I had the old. It was too small. Wasn't big enough at the time, and I know that's changed now, but. I was very small, and I kind of took a bit of time out when I heard that it didn't sit right with me. Took a bit of time out. I spent about a year actually not playing anywhere but at school, and then got asked to go to Wigan Athletic as an under 16. Went in, did well, and got offered a 2-year scholarship at Wigan, which would have been. That would have been for the 2008 season. So at the time, Wigan were doing very well. They had some top draw players. I know the likes of Valencia and Palacios, Heskey.
Yeah, with the Premier League then as well.
They were in the Premier League. Yeah, they were doing
decent.
really well. They were very good at the time, and so I was growing up. I was deliberating about whether I should take it or not, whether I should take the 2-year scholarship. And at the time, my dad actually, he wasn't against it, but he would have preferred for me to just go to school. My dad spent a lot of time in the game. He's played professionally, and he's still heavily involved in the game from a coaching standpoint. And I wasn't sure whether I was going to take it. It was obviously great to have been offered it. And I remember I played one game. This would have been about a month after I got offered it, and I hadn't accepted it at this point, and I had a blinder of a game, and I remember getting in the car at the end, and right on the drive back, my dad said to me, "Look, son, if you want to take it, I'll stand behind you, and we'll back you 100%. The only thing that I ask if you do take it is that you carry on with your education and you don't solely focus on football and soccer." And I agreed to it and took the scholarship. But what I did at the time, I know for a lot of scholars back then, what they did was BTECs. So they did a course 1 day a week while we were doing the scholar. And what I did instead was I went to a college called Winstanley College, which at the time was in the top 2 colleges in the UK, and did A-levels while I was a full-time scholar at Wigan.
We've had a few Wigan scholars who've done A-levels, actually.
Have you?
Yeah, but they kind of get looked at, I wouldn't say looked down upon, but they're looked at differently. And I don't know if even in a positive way, but people are like, oh, you're doing A-levels, must not be taking this serious. Not from Wigan's point of view, but we find that across the board, across England.
David and Chris, you know what, I think this is the first time we would have discussed this on the podcast. And I know that there's going to be a lot of North American listeners that do not know the difference, but what the BTEC and the A-levels are. Obviously, I've recruited a lot of kids from overseas, but a quick 30 seconds on what the difference is.
Well, God, how do you explain it? A-levels is more like traditional subjects, like you can do maths and English and them sort of like traditional subjects. But BTEC is kind of like a reasonably new, probably last 20 years thing. I mean, I did it. I'm 36 now, but I did one in travel and tourism, weirdly enough. And you do it more specific towards a kind of career you want to do it in, but it's worth the same amount of kind of credit, so to speak, to get you through high school, to make you graduate, if you want to call it that,
Yeah, we used to call it vocational school for the American listeners, where actually in high school you could go to a vocation, nursing or something like that, and you could still do the high school, but you were doing that on the side. So
yeah. Well, the kind of what everyone does now, really, I'd say a lot of people do a thing called the BTEC sport. So like you do, like everyone's like, oh, would I rather do something? People who are not as academic tend to do that, and just kind of, it keeps them in school, but they'll play football, soccer, and just kind of do that and learn more about that. So it's kind of obviously seems more exciting on the top of things with like doing sport rather than chemistry or science or something like that. But yeah, so David chose the A-levels route, which is typically more for the academic type of people, which we find, is that probably the right way of doing it, David? We explain it better.
Yeah, I'd say so. I mean, the BTEC that we did, I actually did the first few weeks of it, and it just didn't sit with me. I'm not going to say not that it was easy, but I felt like I wouldn't get value out of it, and I was only doing it for that few weeks because the college that I wanted to go to do my A-levels, so the 2-year college I wanted to go to do my A-levels hadn't started. But yeah, I think that's a good way of explaining it. I think Don touched on it. You know, the vocational is a BTEC, and then your A-levels are the more traditional educational subjects.
Yeah, perfect. That'll make sense to everybody there, because I get that question all the time from America. If I bring it up, they always ask what that means. So
yeah, it's a little bit different. Yeah. So so you're at Wigan, were you there for 2 years? Like, how did that go? That 2 years?
Yeah, I was there for 2 years, and I mean my career. I'll go into it a bit, but I never really had any injuries up to 16. And then started full time, and my body, I just couldn't handle it. I came in the fittest player in the group by a long way. I worked unbelievably hard to make sure I was in shape, and it paid dividends in the preseason. I was as a first year scholar, so to speak. You don't tend to replace second years coming in, and I'd come in and I was playing 90 minutes every game in preseason, and we played some good teams. I mean, we played Rangers, we'd played Celtic, we played some good sides, and I was doing unbelievably well. Which coming in you're still a boy. I was 16. I was still a boy, and I look back at it and was really proud of myself now of how I did coming in, but I started just picking up injuries. Right at the back end of preseason, I'd get an injury, and it was a muscle strain. I'd have a bit of hip pain, and it carried on. Pretty much throughout the 2 years, I had a double hernia operation at 16, a sports hernia operation at 16, and that was supposed to cure everything, and it never did. I'd play a game. I'd have to sit out for 3 days, and they'd come back and try and train, and I'd pull a muscle. So I missed so much time, and I actually got offered a pro on the premise that I could stay fit. So all the other players had been given the decision: you're either staying or you're not. And
how many were told not versus how many told were staying?
I think there were 4 or 5 that got told they were staying, and we had a pretty big age group. I think there were about 7 or 8 that got told they weren't.
Yeah.
And I was the one that was on the fence, where I'd got told, and it was actually Dave Watson, the ex Everton player, he's a great guy, just great with the lads. And I remember him pulling me in and saying, if you can stay fit, you're going to get a pro, because we want you to be here. And it's great to hear, but I'm looking at it going, I've not been able to stay. I haven't been able to stay fit. And
how many games did you play? Sorry to interrupt. How many games did you think you played over the 2 years, roughly?
Over the 2 years, I bet 15, 20 in 2 years.
Well, they must think highly of it then, if you're only playing that amount of games and still getting offered something if you stay fit.
Look, I did everything I could to stay fit, even when I was injured, and I worked very hard. So whenever I came back, I was always in good shape, and I think genetically I was okay as well, because my dad was the same. And I remember we actually played Tottenham in the FA Youth Cup, and I mean, the Tottenham side, they had 7 players who had already played in the Europa League. So Harry Kane was the captain. They had John Bostock, Stephen Colker, Jake Nicholson, Tom Carroll. I mean, this team was littered
some good players there.
Oh, they were touted as the best team in the country at the time, and understandably so. And we played them in the FA Youth Cup, and I'd actually been out leading up to it as per. And they actually left me out so that when the game was there, I was ready and fit to play. So I played in the game and did really well. Played against Ryan Fredericks, who's now at West Ham, he was a 100-meter champion in London, and he was a good player. And for me, it was a great challenge. But we went toe to toe. We just went at it for about 70 minutes until I got cramp and came off. After the game, I found out that there were England under-19 coaches there watching the game, more so because of the Tottenham players, but they wanted to know more about myself, which was it's great. You know, you hear that, and it's nice. It's nice to hear that kind of stuff. But for me, I needed to stay fit, and it just was never happening. And even with the England stuff, nothing came of it because I could never stay fit. And it was for no other reason than my body, I just couldn't cope with. We did everything we possibly could at the time, and I just couldn't cope with full-time football. That was all it was. And it was nice to be thought highly of by the people that were there, by the decision makers. And I even remember the day that I got told that I wasn't going to get my pro, and I knew I wasn't. I knew that it was coming because I couldn't stay fit. That I actually was in the same room as Martinez, and there was a comment made by one of the assistant coaches, just joking around as you do in the game. And Martinez laughed and he said, "You know, this kid's a player." And it's great to hear that stuff, but again, I knew the writing was on the wall, and I was aware of it. I knew what was coming, so. I left Wigan, didn't get the pro, and had a few options afterwards. I went to Wickham, but I also got offered a chance to go to Spain to the Glen Hoddle Academy, which at the time Glen Hoddle they were partnering with a club in Spain called Jerez, and the idea was that all of the players that Glen Hoddle brought over would play in the Spanish 3rd division. And for me,
I remember it well. It was pretty well known, wasn't it, at the time? It was probably the only thing that was really unique in English football at the time, anyway.
Yeah, I think that was probably the first main one, because there's been a few since that have done a similar thing.
That was the first moment. People talk about it now still.
Yeah. And I mean, Glenn Hoddle was, so when you get released, I know a lot of the English people listening will know that when you get released, you go to the exit trial. So I went to the Premier League exit trials. So all players from all the Premier League clubs go there, and there's basically scouts, there's coaches from all over the world, and there'll be college coaches from the US, there'll be other Premier League coaches, and all the way down into League One, League Two. And I did well. I had a good day, and as I was getting changed at the end, we're in the changing room, and one of the coaches that looked after our team came and he said, "David, can you just come with us?" And as I've come out of the room, he said, "Glenn Hoddle wants to speak to you," which to me, I'm like, Glenn Hoddle, that's cool. So obviously, he's an England legend, really. I mean, what a player he was. And
for people who don't know who he is like you say, he's a legend of the 80s, would you say? 70s?
Yeah, 80s. And I mean, as a player, was one of the best of his time. And then too, obviously, I know him more so from when he managed England, because I was too young, but I've seen clips of him when he played. But I went and Glenn Hoddle was there. And he real simply said, "Look, we really like you. We think you've got a lot of potential. We want you to come to Spain. There's a few steps before you take that process, but we're really interested. We think you've got a lot of potential." And so I left the exit trial thinking, that sounds fantastic. What a great idea. And I wanted to do it. I wanted to go to Spain. So the idea was that I would go for the start of that next season, which was it would have been the 2010-2011 season. And in the lead up to it, I got injured again. And there's similarity in pretty much every step of the story, where right when something happens, I got injured and I was out for 8 months. But luckily, when I got fit, I ended up going over to Spain. Went over in January of 2011. Signed for Jerez and spent time with Glenn Hoddle and the other staff that he had there, and learned so much.
You didn't get paid, did you? You just got things paid for. How did it work in terms of that sort?
We got paid, but it was I guess living expenses. So we got a villa. We had a villa that we lived in. They fed us. Everything was paid for, and then they gave us expenses just to live. So if we wanted to go out and get a bite to eat, we'd get paid to live. And at the time, I could have stayed in England and got a contract somewhere else, and that felt right for me. I felt like to develop as a player, that was probably my best opportunity. And there were some really good players there. That Sam Clucas was there.
Yeah, I remember that actually. Yeah,
Gordon Hugel was there. There were a lot of players that are still playing now. They're playing in from the Premier League all the way down to League Two. So the standard was high. It was a real technically efficient group of players. But they ended up having financial issues where the club and Glenn, I think the club owed money or whatever happened. All the players, this would have been in April of 2011, every player moved back to England.
Yeah.
And, at that point, what do you do? I had a decision to make of, do I stay here and stay in England and try and make something happen? And I knew that I would get a contract somewhere. The only thing is that you get a 1-year contract and you get a few £100 a week or whatever it is you get offered. And after that 1 year, it doesn't work out, or you get a bad injury and you're done. And then what do you do? So for me, my dad actually played in the US. He played in college. He won a national championship. And
who for?
It was at Mercer Mercer Community College. It was a 2-year college.
Yep.
He went there. He's got his ring, and he got a was voted MVP, and so my dad spent a lot of time in the US coaching after he played, but we followed similar paths. And because he'd done it, I thought, let's look into it. Let's see what we can get. And at that point, I started the process.
So this is your gap year now, right? You've left Wigan and then you're in your gap year, and you got to Spain in January, and then so on. Yeah,
that was it. This was the year after the Scholar. I spent time in Spain, and things didn't work out with every player. Every player had to move back. This was the gap year, and it was April of 2011. So it's quite late in the recruiting process.
Yeah.
At this point, you look and you think, I look back at it now and go, wow, for me to have got the offers that I got at the time, astounding, really, because scholarships get wrapped up early. And
just to jump in there a second, I obviously I've met your dad a couple of times, and he's a great guy and he's very knowledgeable. And I can imagine, obviously, if he's been through the college process, he's the sort of person who have a lot of contacts. Is that how tell us how you actually got out there? I think you're about to anyway, but sorry, just jump in there.
Yes. So my dad had one contact. There were a few, but the main one was St. John's, New York. So Dave Mason, my dad knew him from Rutgers. So my dad actually, after he was at Mercer Community College, he got asked to go to Rutgers, and he didn't take it because from an educational standpoint, he wasn't interested. He just had no interest in it, and didn't bother. But he met Dave. He spent some time coaching at Rutgers. So he coached like Pete Vermees, and at the camps, the likes of Claudio Reyna, they went to the Rutgers camps because a lot of them are from New Jersey. So he had a few contacts, but he contacted Dave Mason, and straight away Dave was interested. But from there, besides that, what else can you get? And it was a case we had a video made and just fired them out to everybody.
What sort of GCSEs did you have at the time, and your A levels? What did you get?
So I did well in school, and I made pretty well in school. I got A stars, A's, and B's. I think it was 3 A
All right,
stars.
so you're a good academic as well, then. So you got both.
So it helps. It helps, and same with my A levels. I only went to the college a day and a half a week, and came away with 2 B's in A levels. So I always worked hard because I knew that it was important. If an opportunity like this ever came up, so emails out, videos out, and things started coming back one by one. You'd get messages from coaches. And I remember looking at the rankings from that season, looking at that'd be nice, that'd be cool. And you think, no. At the time, Akron had won the national championship the year before. So they were number 1. And you go down the list, you got Louisville, and you see these big names. And some schools you recognise. So you see your Stanfords, the big schools, your UCLAs, that I think a lot of English people know of. Did you know much about the system itself? Obviously, your dad's been through it, which is very rare that you have like a parent that's done it. But did you know much about like all the different divisions, how it works? Like you mentioned, like your dad went to a community college, junior college. Did you know much about that? I knew a lot more than most. I'd say.
Fair enough. Yeah,
but not to the point where I was proficient in it. I understood the Division 1, Division 2, and I have a really close. He's a close family friend, Bob Riasso, he was the head coach at Rutgers. He was the head coach at Rutgers for 30 years or so, and also was at Fife University and won a national championship there. So I had people that I could lean on that had been in the system and knew as much, if not more, than anybody. So that helped. That certainly helped. And, as the offers came in, for me, the big thing was to do as much research as I could. So every offer that came in, I never turned anything down. I made sure I did research, and I was lucky to have all these offers so late in the day. But as they came in one by one, I remember I was training one night just to stay fit, and as I finished the session, I looked at my phone and I had an email from Akron, which you look and you go, wow, they just won the national championship. So straight away that it gets your attention. But my final 4 schools were Akron, they were UNC Charlotte, San Diego State, and St. John's in New York. And it's a tough decision, I think, for anybody that is in the process of making it, or anybody that's going to go through the process. Is you have to do the research. And most importantly, you have to know what it is you're actually going for. So for me, I knew that I wanted to play football, and education was obviously high on the list because that's why I was going over. But I wanted to go to a program that I knew I could develop as a player. Or I thought that I would be in a good place to develop as a player. So some people may not want that. They may want a great lifestyle, and that's totally fine. But as long as you know what it is you want to go for, it helps the final decision-making process. And I knew what I wanted, and I made a pros and cons list, and I got it down to Akron and UNC Charlotte in the end. And I ended up committing to Akron. But I was very professional in the way I dealt with it, and I kept all my options open. And even when I committed to Akron, I remember that the hardest conversation I actually made was to call Jeremy Gunn and tell him that I was going to Akron and not to Charlotte, because the way he made me feel during that recruiting process and the things he did to go out of his way, I felt bad not going. I felt like I'd actually let him down, and I'd never met him in person, but I made point to call him and thank him for what he'd done.
It's rare though, that, David. Like, you know what? That's one thing people don't do is, like, they get all these coaches spend the time recruiting players. And obviously from my point of view and Don's point of view, we deal with this daily, but players just, instead of like replying back and saying thank you, I was trying to make people do it, and even calling them, or even just a simple text or email, people just ignore them and just like commit, and then just kind of, do you know what I mean? You never know what that coach is going to be in the future, that you might need them again. Yeah,
absolutely. And I think for anybody that is listening that's going through the processes, you have to do that. You never know when you might come across somebody again. And I like I said, I made point to every coach that I said no to. I made point to reach out to them and just give them a simple explanation. You don't have to go into full detail. And I said to Jeremy Gunn, I said, look, I've decided to go to Akron because of the strength of the program currently, and because of the players that were coming in that coming season. There were like, I think there were 4 players that had played on the US under-20 national team. So they recruited heavily. And I remember Jeremy Gunn saying to me, he just said, I appreciate you calling me up, and I thank you, and I wish you all the best at Akron. But let's hope that our paths cross in the future. And it was important for me to do that. So obviously I'd committed to Akron, and we'll fast forward a few months. I went to Akron, went and played there in the fall. And again, for those listening, things I don't think they're not always going to work out. And for me, it didn't work out at Akron. I met some great people there. One of my best friends, I was actually speaking to him just before this call, Will Trapp, who's captain of the national team.
Yeah.
So I've met some great people at the school, and it just wasn't for me.
Why?
Just the experience that I had, it just didn't fit. It just didn't fit. I think that's as much as I need to say.
Right. Okay.
But again, there were some great people there. It just wasn't what I expected. And
so you went there. In terms of the playing side of things, I looked the other night, and you play about 7 games, something like that?
I did, and I started. So coming in as a freshman, obviously at a big school, I started the first few games.
Which is rare.
It's rare, and especially at a big school.
Yeah.
And it was the powerhouse. I mean, the 3 years prior to, they were the biggest school in soccer. And they still are. They're still massive. Still a huge school to go to. So I played early on, and things happen, and I don't think you'll always see eye to eye with people, and that's fine. That's fine, because people have different opinions and different views on how things should be done, and I'm okay with that too. So it didn't work out, and it's funny. We actually played Charlotte, UNC Charlotte, in the tournament later that season. So I went to Charlotte with Akron, played against them, and I had a few friends that were at Charlotte. And after the game, we were chatting, and they, a couple of them said to me, are you transferring? Because they'd heard, are you transferring? And they were the lads were quite keen on it, on me moving there. And
was Jeremy still there at the time? I can't remember what year he left.
He was still there at the time. He was. So that was right before he went to Stanford. But even after the game, we went over. It was a quick chat. Great to meet you, and good luck with the rest of the run, because they knocked us out. It was the year they got to the final. But great guy, really good guy.
So now by this point, you've left a good impression with him. You've met him. You've shook his hand, and obviously knows who you are now.
Yeah, and they knocked us out. So off they went. They carried on, and we were done for the season. So for me at this point, I turned my attention to what's next. Where am I going? So obviously at the end of the season, I then, through the schools I wanted to go, at the schools I was looking at, I wanted to go to, threw them out there, and Charlotte was one of them. Charlotte was definitely one of them. I've been to the place now with the game, and it was a beautiful school, and Jeremy was still there, and that was big for me. I had friends who were there, and right as I'd said that I wanted, Charlotte was on the top of the list. Jeremy actually went to Stanford, and what a job he's done at Stanford too. I think you look at college coaches and what they've achieved. He's been at 3 different schools now. He's won several national championships at different schools. He's been to national championship games, and I think it's a credit to what he's done. But
would you mind me? Sorry to jump in there. Can I take a step back? Because I'm just thinking now. Obviously, you've gone into college soccer from playing in England, and then Spain as well. Just to kind of throw a few things in there. How did you find the transition? And maybe physically, mentally. Just what were your thoughts when you got there?
Yeah, college. It's so different to any other format in the world. So you think about, you're playing 20. You could play over 20 games in the span of 2.5 months. And while you're doing that, you're also going to school full time. So I came in and I'd already been told, obviously speaking to my dad and speaking to other people, that I knew that the standard would be high. And I think I had a better idea of that than most at the time. As an English person coming across, you think, well, you could think, I've played at X, Y, and Z, and this is going to be easy for me.
Yeah,
and I knew that. Yeah, and a lot of people do. I think there's a misconception that college soccer, because you've come over from England or because you've played at a club, that you come over and you'll just walk in and it's easy. And it couldn't be further from the truth. It's a physical game. It's a competitive game, and you have to be fit. And I think that was one thing for me going over, because I'd missed so much time. And even after leaving Spain, there was about a 4-month period where I wasn't really training that much, because in little niggles here and there. But for anyone that's going to be going over or that's going to be starting college, is make sure you're fit and make sure you're in shape. And anything that you get given by the coaches, by the fitness staff of the school you're going to, complete it and do it to the best of your ability. And you've got to push yourself beyond where you've ever been before, because you've got, a week and a half, 2 weeks of preseason before you're in all of a sudden into a run of games. And if you're not fit, it catches up with you real quick. Again, for myself, I had injuries at Akron. I had a few injuries, hips, around that area, groins, where I missed games. In college, When you miss games, or if you get injured, you could get injured and you're out for a week and you've missed 3 games.
Yeah, roll your ankle, you're half a season gone. Do you know what I mean?
Exactly. And for me, as the college system is, I think I loved it. It was the best thing I ever did. The best thing I ever did was go over to America and go to college and play. For the things that I learned and the things that I saw, the things that I did, and the things that I learned, because without it, I wouldn't be who I am today. It helped me shape who I am, and a lot of the experiences that I've had have led me to doing what I'm doing today. But that the big, I'd say the only downside, the main downside, is how short the season is, and if you get injured or you get sick, whatever, because things happen. Like you said, you could miss half a season.
It might be changing that soon, though. Obviously we talk about it all the time, but extending the season over the year, so that could change. Which, like you say, is a big negative, and it's hard to get used to at first.
Mm-hmm. It certainly, and even for myself. So I did my first year at Akron, and then I ended up transferring. I ended up going to UNC Charlotte, not under Jeremy Dunn, because he left. I went under the new coach that was there, that had took over, who was the assistant when I was initially getting recruited. Who
was that?
It was Kevin Langan.
Yeah, I guess he was watching Wigan play this weekend.
Oh, okay.
Been over in Wigan, funnily enough.
Yep. Well, that was, so I went to, that was it. I went to Charlotte, and, you touch on it. It takes time to get used to with the short season. But I went into Charlotte and I got injured in the lead up to preseason. I just had issues with my hips, and I missed the first 5 games, I'd say, and preseason. So when you then come in, if you're not fit and you can't hit the ground running, you're in trouble, because you don't have time to train and get fit during that. You're just straight into games, and it's a game. You'll have a recovery session, and then you'll do a bit of tactical stuff the day after, then you have another game. And I couldn't get fit. All season was that my second year was a tough one for me because of that. And again, it is what it is. I go, I wasn't fit. And I think the college system, it doesn't allow for you to get fit if you haven't had a good off season and preseason.
Yeah.
Third year was similar. My third year, I'd had a little bit of issues in the off season and in the spring season. So I missed a bit of the spring and the off season. And then luckily I did get the preseason in this time, but I was behind still. But when we started, I was able to play, and in my third year I played 18 games. I led the team in assists. And by trade I'm a left back. If you were to ask me my best position, it would be left back. But I played in several different positions. I played left midfield, and I played centre midfield a lot in my third year. Played 18 games. Season went well. And I remember, I'll never forget it. We got beat by Coastal Carolina in the national tournament. And it was hard for me to take. Getting beat in that game, because we shouldn't have been beat. We were better than what we showed that night, and in knockout games, it's whoever turns up on the day, and they were better than us on the day, and they knocked us out. But it stuck with me, and I made a promise. Look, I'm not going to let this happen again. And I went away that off season, so December, and I worked so hard, and I ended up getting to a place where I was fit and didn't get any injuries. And that whole spring season of 2014, no injuries. Pre-season, no injuries. And actually in the summer of 2014, I went to Sporting KC for the summer. Went there for a few weeks and trained with the MLS team, and did really, really well. And I remember after...
How did that come about? Do you mind me asking?
Yeah, so it actually came through Bob Riasso that I touched on earlier. He
yeah.
coached Peter Vermees, and I always knew that if I was able to stay fit, I would play professionally. I knew I had the ability, but I also knew more that I was willing to do what was needed from a standpoint of how hard I would work. And I went to KC, did really well, and at the back end of that week, I had a conversation with Peter Vermees, and I said to him, "What do I need to do to play for your team? What do I need to do to be here?" And he answered the question, and that stuck with me. And I thought, I'm going to go into the fall season. I'm going to with.
What did he tell you then? Don't be shy.
So that at the time, it was one of them was that no player was bigger than the team. And I wrote them down. It's bad of me, actually. I've not got every answer, but what I did at the time was I went back to the hotel room and I wrote them on my laptop and printed them off, and I stuck them in my room in college.
So the gist of it was to get on that team.
So it was to be on the team that no one is bigger than the team. It was around, your work ethic, around, I'd say they were the biggest. They were the biggest too, but it was around that. But there were certain words that he used.
Yeah, but to work hard and obviously just be humble, probably.
Yeah. And I went back to Charlotte for that fall season of 2014. And I've been.
Is this now your junior or senior year?
This is my senior year.
Senior year, sorry.
This is my senior year. So it was going into my senior year. We'd actually been told that if I stayed fit, I was going to KC, or that if I performed, I was going to KC. And I went into the season, first game of the year, just as it always had been. Got an MCL strain back end of the game. So senior season, first game in, everything's hyped up that things are going to go great, and got an MCL sprain. Missed 4 weeks. Came back the start of October. Didn't train. I went straight into a game. Played, scored, set up another. We won the game, and you think, wow, what a good comeback. I still felt great. We had the day off afterwards, and then the day after that, I went into a tackle and broke my arm and dislocated my wrist. So
Jesus.
Senior season done. Yeah, senior season was done, finished, and I then had a choice. Do I go into the draft? Do I declare for it, knowing that I won't have trained for 2 months prior to it, or do I take my medical red shirt, because I actually did the injury the day before the deadline.
Yeah, I've got to say, it must have been tight.
It was meant to be. So I medical redshirted, and I'd obviously had a bit of time off with the arm, but came back, played the spring season. In the summer, I went to Columbus and I went to KC. And again, Peter Vermees, he said to me, stay fit and you'll be good. And went into the fall of 2015, played the first, I think it was 9 games. I played more minutes than anybody on the team, which for me, as you have heard, is rare, because I normally pick up something, but I played more minutes than anybody and was flying. And we played Clemson. I think it was the 9th or 10th game of the season, and I went up for a header and got a whack. And long story short, I got a concussion, and that derailed the season. I never played again, and that was it. I was done. College was over. I missed the draft. I missed everything. I was out for 11 months with a concussion.
Jesus, man.
So, I look at that, and at the end of the day, I never played in the MLS. I would have got drafted. We knew it. We already knew that I would, because we'd spoken to clubs about it, and we knew it was happening, but I wasn't able to. But the one thing that I did have was I had my degree, and I had all of this experience behind me, but I wasn't done with playing. I still wanted to play. So I came back. I did everything I could to play. And long story short, I had, because of the visa issues that you have in the US, obviously I wasn't a student anymore so much. I did my master's at Pfeiffer, so I was a graduate assistant coach there. And after that, I tried to play again, and I was never able.
Sorry to jump back a step. Is that when they won the national championship, or is it afterwards?
It was the year after. So the funny thing is, when I got my concussion, that season of 2015 when they won it, I spent a lot of time at Pfeiffer just because Bob, someone that I trust him implicitly. He's a friend and he's a mentor. But I spent a lot of time just watching. So we'd play our games, but I would then drive 40 minutes and spend time with Bob. I'd watch the games whenever I could and spend time around him. So when they won the national championship, I spent a lot of time. I went to the Final Four to watch. By that time I was done. I couldn't play. But they went 25-0, and one of the best teams I've seen in college with the players that they had. So then the year after, so it would have been 2016, I was a grad assistant with them, coached while trying to get fit. Didn't finish my master's because I still wanted to play. I still had this burning desire within me that I was good enough to play. And I ended up moving back to England in April of 2017. And I've been told that I had a club that I could go to, professional club in the UK, for pre-season. So leading up to the pre-season, I was doing my UEFA B license as well. So at this point, I had my degree. I was doing my UEFA B license, but still with the intention that I was going to play. And I knew that I could if I could stay fit. And
can I just put a break on that for 1 second? Because now you've moved away from the US. Don, obviously, have you got anything to ask or say at this point before we kind of move on back to the UK situation?
No, I'm just I really feel for you, David. Though thinking back, certain players that I knew were highly talented that I had coached that just always have that niggling injury that comes up, and it's nothing that they're doing wrong. It's not like they're not coming in fit, not like they're working at it. But man, it's just what a tough row. How were you able to mentally handle it? You keep coming back, man. You keep hanging. And I've seen so many kids that are just, I'm done. I can't do this anymore. Because emotionally it takes a toll on you, doesn't it, David?
Yeah, absolutely. And there were, I am unbelievably fortunate to have had my dad around, because I think growing up, I have this mindset of, I think, things happen for a reason. Things do happen for a reason, but I can either sit here and sulk and complain and look at the bad things and why me, or I can get on with it, because if I sit here and sulk, it's not going to get any better. I'm just going to make things worse for myself. And there were times, don't get me wrong, there have been plenty of tears shed throughout the process. Leading up to this point, there were plenty of tears, and I'd been in a dark place. When I had the concussion, I was in a really dark place. That was tough. That for me was the toughest period. But every time you get an injury, there's the mental aspect to it, and I think it did impact me and affected me when I started playing. The longer it went on, the more I had impact, because I was quite reserved at times. I was cautious, and you know how it is. When you play and you feel a little bit of something, and you just there's a worry that sets in that I hope I've not done this. I hope I'm okay tomorrow. I know we've got a big game coming up, and I lived with that I lived with it for 6 years. But I had a good support team around me, and I had people that I would lean on. But I also knew that I could either sulk about it or I could get on with it. And I'd maybe spend a day or so feeling sorry for myself, but then it was like give myself a kick up the backside, and I've got to get on, because no one else is going to fix this. It's got to be me that does it. And I'd live with that. So after everything I'd been through, I was back in England, and it was actually on the B license leading up to the pre-season of me going to one of the pro clubs in the UK, and I hit a ball and I felt something go in my hip, and it just, when you know you've done something, you know. And I walked off the field, and my dad was actually there, and I said to him, I said, Dad, there's something not right here. And went to see my physio that I had that kept me going, I'd say, from a physical perspective for so long. And he referred me to a specialist. And long story short, I had hip surgery and I've never played since. So in 2017 at 25, I was done. I'd been in, I had a major hip surgery. And I think during that whole time, the hip was the overlying issue. It was just that, you know, if you have hip surgery, it's tough to come back from. But I had it, I was done. That was it. That was me finished from a playing perspective. And again, at that point, you have a decision to make. And I had a few months where I was stuck in the house. I couldn't do very much. And I could either sit and sulk, or I could find other things that interested me. And I read a lot of books. I looked at other avenues, and I was already on the path of my B license. So from there, I coached when I was able to. I coached, and I got involved in some business stuff as well. But I'm thankful, you know, sounds silly, but I'm thankful for what happened, because without it, I wouldn't be who I am today. I don't have any regrets about it. I would have loved to have played longer. I would have loved to, I guess, I don't know whether fulfill potential is the right way to say it, because I don't know whether that is correct. I only know what I know about what I was like when I was playing. I just had a lot of injuries. And even now, there's times I wish I could still play. But for me, going to college and getting the degree and committing myself to that process, I came out better for it. And I think, I mean, I look at where I am right now. So I'm actually back in America, and I'm coaching full time for a club that's based on 4 continents. And I'm one of the directors that oversees coach recruitment and coach mentoring and player development for a club that is in 4 different parts of the world. And I get to travel and see things that I'm really fortunate to do. But as well as that, I think, you know, everything happens for a reason for me, and the things that happened to me, I took positives from them. There were things that at the time weren't great, and I learned from them, and those experiences led me to where I am. And the latest thing is, and I'm really, really proud to say it, is that I wrote a book with my dad, which became a bestseller in the UK. I don't think I wouldn't have done that if it wasn't for the experiences that I've been through, because everything that I went through led me to the beliefs that I have in writing the book.
Tell us about the book then. Gold Dust: How to Become a More Effective Coach Quickly. Is that right?
Yeah, it is.
Yeah,
so,
that's why I was like, originally, obviously I've been connected with you and stuff for a number of years and stuff like that. But when that came on, I was like, oh, that's awesome to see. It doesn't surprise me you and your dad have done that in the slightest. So yeah, tell us a little bit about it. And yeah, I'm interested in it myself. I haven't read it yet, so I know Don would definitely like something like this.
Yeah, it's so the book is about the importance of connection, the importance of building relationships. It's built on a sporting platform. So my dad's vastly experienced, and he's incredible at what he does. And I spent time around that. So I developed those beliefs, but I also developed beliefs from the experiences I had. I think you can learn from positive and negative experiences. And for me, I think the thing that will always stand true with me is how you deal with people and how you make them feel. And if you treat people correctly and you make them feel good about what it is they do, they're likely going to perform better anyway. And there were times in my career where I didn't get that. I didn't feel that. I felt that some people I dealt with could have probably done things differently, had done things better. But that's the way they do it, and that's fine. But for me, and for my dad, we both truly believe that you have to treat people correctly. You have to treat them right. You have to treat them as people before you treat them as a player or before you treat them as an athlete. So the book, we started writing it in July 2019. And we've got there's 12 people that feature in it, from Premier League coaches to some of the top youth coaches to a rugby league coach who's one of the most successful coaches of all time, to a world champion athlete who's now a teacher and coach. And we compiled a book based around how important it is to build a connection with people, build a connection with athletes, and make them feel good, treat them right, and you'll likely get more out of them. And the book actually got released. It got released on Thanksgiving Day in the US, which was the back end of November. And within a day,
you put that together pretty quick then, July to Thanksgiving.
Yeah, really quick. I mean, Starbucks would have loved me because I spent countless amount of money in there. They knew my order off heart. They knew my name. I'd just walk in and they'd have the drink ready and I'd just pay for it. But I spent a lot of hours. Obviously, I was working. I was still at the club that I'm at currently, but I was also in Starbucks 4 or 5 hours a day. Whenever I was free, I would go in and I just committed myself fully to it. Absolutely threw myself at writing this because both my dad and I truly believe that it would add value to people's lives, and it would add value to coaches and help them give athletes better experiences. Because I think if you're coaching at a high level, so even if you're coaching where it's about the wins and losses, you can still treat people right and you can still make them feel good. And look, if people don't do what they're supposed to do from an athletic perspective, you can get into the ribs a bit and you can let them know. But at the same time, they're still human and they're still people. And I think it's something that I truly believe in. I'll take it with me everywhere I go. And I live by that. I know my dad lives by it too, but the book became a bestseller within the first day. And it's been up and around there for 3 months, bestseller in the UK in its categories. And
I'm just going to read some of the the headlines from the reviews on Amazon. I thought I'd quickly look now, but the best sport book of the year, inspiring coaching playbook. This is just like kind of snippets. If you're a coach, you need to read this. Insightful, a fresh approach, great read and very helpful. You won't be able to put this down. Wow. Great read. I'm not doing this like to make you red faced or anything like that, but it's just good to read. But internationally, amazing book, awesome book. Yeah, and independently published as well. So you guys have put this together yourself and kind of
the whole thing, cover the works, did it all ourselves. And
you're gonna write another one?
There's another one in the working. There's another one in the works. It's started, but you know, it's just when you have people come to you. I mean, people have reached out to me on social media. I've had someone stop me in the street, and you know, I read your book, and your book was amazing. But the amount of people that I have never met on social media that I'm just. Sounds silly, I'm just me, you know, my business, and to have people reach out and say, you know, I can't tell you how much this book has helped me. And we've had people come to us and say that it's helped them in situations that they've been in as a coach already. And you think, wow, to have put something together that other people are finding value from now is amazing. And it's obviously led to opportunities. We've been on the radio a few times, and we've been asked to do podcasts and lots of different things like that. But the main thing is that it is adding value, and we believe that it would do, and we're unbelievably proud that it has. But it's not stopped. There will be other books in the making. There'll be another book coming, and you know, we'll see. It's exciting. It is really exciting because if you'd have asked me last January 2019, if you'd have told me I was going to write a book and it would be a bestseller, and I laughed at you.
Yeah,
and you fast forward 12
testament
months.
to you and your dad's drive and kind of knowledge as well to share it. So, no, like I said, I've met your dad before. One of the most knowledgeable people just in life I've ever met, and I'm sure you've been around it for many years, and you picked up on that yourself. So you're kind of a offspring to that. So I can imagine what the book is, and I'm ashamed to say I haven't read it yet, but I definitely will put it on the list for sure.
Yeah,
Chris, I took care of you. I've already ordered my copy while we were talking. So.
Oh, brilliant. Brilliant. Enjoy it, Don. Enjoy. You'll have to let me know what you think.
So what's your plans then, David? Like with it all, you've got to a point now. I mean, you're director of a club, and you're working all over the world, and you've got this book thing going on.
Tell us how that came about. So how did you end up coming back here and being director at a club? And yeah, how did that come about? Yeah,
that's it's quite funny how it works. So I was, like I touched on, I kind of jumped from, but I was back in England, and I was doing stuff at Man City at the time, coaching, and I had a few other business things going on that are still happening in my life now. I do a lot of stuff in China, importing, exporting with a good friend of mine, because I think it's important to have more than one string to your bow. I think you need to have different qualities. I think it's important. So I was in England and I was settled, and I ended up coming over to the US for a wedding for a good friend. I was one of the groomsmen at a wedding over here. And while I was here, I thought, you know what, I want to move back. I do want to move back to the US, and went back home after the wedding. And within, I guess, the power of good thought, within 2 weeks, I got offered this job by a guy who my dad mentored. He's a now really, really close friend of mine. He's the technical director of the whole club. He worked at Liverpool previously, and he offered me a job to move to come to Salt Lake. And obviously I did, again, I think there's a theme in it. I did research on it, because before I dive into something, I want to know more about it. But I took the job. Eventually I had a look and took the job. And since I've been here, not because of me, but since I've been here, the club has expanded to 4 continents. And now I'm based in Salt Lake City. But I've been to Tanzania. I spent time in Tanzania at the club. We're in the UK, so I've spent time there, and I'll be going over to the Middle East, likely within the next few weeks, to do some stuff there for the club that we have in the Middle East. So there's a lot of travel, which is great, and it's good for me. I'm settled. I'm settled here. But in terms of the future, let's see. We'll see what happens. I know there'll be another book coming out. I'll still be pushing Gold Dust. Both my dad and I'll be pushing it out everywhere we can, because we think that it adds value. We believe that it does. From a coaching perspective, like I said, I'm happy. I'm happy where I am. But all I know is that whatever I do and wherever I go, my aim is just to be the best person I can be at it, and to fully commit myself. And I think I'm in a really privileged position now, where I have an opportunity to impact so many lives on different continents. And you know, I went to Tanzania and worked with kids there, and there's kids turning up. That was so humbling. You go there and you see kids with no shoes, and they haven't eaten, and they turn up for practice in rags with the biggest smile on the face you'll ever see. And that it hits home when you see that, of how resourceful those people are, and how little they have, but how happy they are. And I go there, and I'd like to think I provided a positive experience for them, where I made it even better for them. So I'm in a really privileged position. I loved the college experience, and I love the environment. So the college game always appeals to me. But right now, I love what I'm doing. I'm really enjoying it. And the travel, the people that I'm working with, I've almost finished my A license. So I'm about a month or so away from completing my UEFA A, which is exciting. That'll be I'll be glad when it's done because it's a lot of work. So we'll see. We'll see. I think, after everything that's happened throughout my the last 12 years from playing to coaching, I look back at it and I'm thankful for all of the opportunities I've had and will continue to have because of it. And for anyone that is listening, the college experience that's the best thing I ever did. Committing to it and going over to America was the best thing I ever did. But it's important that you obviously, when you get over, that you work hard and you're prepared to, there'll be ups and downs. There's no doubt about that, but to commit yourself both athletically and academically, because they go hand in hand over here.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm conscious of time now, so I know you needed to go. So we'll kind of wrap up there. But Don, any last questions from you, and then we'll wrap this all up.
No, I really appreciate you coming on. I love hearing the journey, the story of how you got there. I think that a lot of other coaches that I know listen to this, always wonder how you get involved in things. And tell me if I'm wrong, but it sounds like for you it just was having an open mind and having open dialogue, and it all stemmed around your relationships, didn't it? Yeah,
definitely. And I think that runs true in anything you do, whether it's sports or business or whatever it is. I think pretty much everything stems around the relationships that you build with people. You've obviously got to be good at what you do, because if you're not, you'll get found out quickly. But if you're able to build good relationships and maintain them, it'll put you in good stead, whether you're a college player coming in and you're in that recruiting process, or whether you're a college coach recruiting players, because that relationship thing is, even to this day, the short relationship I had with Jeremy Gunn, for example, and I've only ever seen him in person once, but the way that I'll never forget that the dialogue that we had in my recruiting process, and it's no wonder to me that he's been as successful as he has. And I think the people that are successful and get a lot of success are the ones that treat people correctly and are able to build solid relationships.
Yeah, I think that's a good ending to it all. But David, where can people get hold of you? Social media, stuff like that. Can you give us your handles? Have you got any?
I have. I think it's the same on everything. So Twitter and Instagram it's DJ Mayer 3. I never really used Twitter until the book came out, because I kind of just went on and had a little look. But I'm active on Twitter now and interacting with people. So yeah, I'm on both Twitter and Instagram. So I think for any athletes that are looking at it, if they ever have any questions on the process, my door's always open, and I'd be happy to help in any way that I can too.